Guys, anybody got a question? Kamal, Mahmoud, oh, Andrew, Hannah, a lot of people, very shy people, Vera, and
Yeah, so Amel is talking about the Google keyword tool. Yeah, so this correlation software is quite different. It's checking the number of instances of a particular parameter at a certain rank. And so it asks, based on what factors did we create the correlation tool? So it checks over 300 factors. It checks every single factor we can get access to. It checks every HTML thing that Java can check. It checks all the SERP-based things we could parse out of Google without ticking them off too much. So the software is great. And again, this is not a presentation on the software. This is a presentation on the results, because the results are even more interesting. But just so you have an idea of what I'm working with, the software basically is like a Google browser, and I type in searches into it, and I say, get the correlation data. And it goes through, and it spiders all the different sites on there, and then spiders all the different factors, and we're checking over 300 factors right now. So including, as I said, links and social factors, shares, stuff like that. So the links is a little wonky because we're using, some backlinks genie source like this. But so I'm not showing that to you in this report. I've only limited it to the on-page factors and the SERP factors. But that's still fascinating. And you might think, well, the on-page factors are dead, right? It's all about off-page factors. That's not what we're finding at all. We're finding a huge difference and a huge, very interesting picture being painted about certain factors always rank higher and certain factors always rank lower, on-page factors. So the beautiful thing about that is that's completely in your control. You control your HTML, you control your writing, so you have the ability to, like back in the day, you could rank sites on-page stuff. It's almost like that a little bit now too, where you can change your on-page factors and you can get a little bit higher up. So let me get right. I'll use my old one. How about that?
yeah, it would be wise decision.
Yeah. So how do I run this now? So I've checked it. Now, Anton, what button do I press here?
Amel,
Yeah.
can you see it? Yeah, we can see it on the screen. Okay, sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so it'll be a little small here, but you can make this window that we're all looking at bigger here. Okay, so how do I play? There we go. Okay, so I'll get into the presentation. So I'm doing a correlation study as I was talking about. So here's the problem is that we all know in SEO that correlation is not causation. But correlation is the path to causation. All we have as human beings is examples of things happening, and we can draw inferences as to what we think caused it. We don't have direct access to the realm of the Plato's forms, where we can see everything that's being caused and not being caused. All we have is access to, I made change X, Y, and Z, and A, B, C happened. So maybe something in X, Y, and Z made the changes and caused A, B, and C. So when it comes to SEO, that evidence we need to look at, there's 3 levels of the best kind of evidence. There's observed experience. That's when you make a ranking, you make a change and you see a ranking result, right? You rank 10 sites or 100 sites, or I rank hundreds of sites. I have probably over 500 sites in my analytics and probably over 400 sites in my search console of my sites and my client sites. And so I can see a great number of sites, and I can see when Google rolls out a release. I could see when this factor seems to be ranking sites and this factor seems to be deranking sites. The next level of SEO evidence is what Google and the gurus say. So I listen to the other gurus and I listen to Google, but remember, this has to be factored against what benefits Google and the gurus. If it benefits Google to say this, or if it benefits Google to say the opposite, you have to keep that in mind. And also when the gurus say, for example, that you should use a disavow file, the disavow file works, blah, 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 you have to ask them, do you sell a disavow option? And if the answer is yes, or if you're on the Warrior forum and there's this new SEO thing and And it's wonderful. You ask, okay, do you sell this? And then that you have to factor that in. You have to weigh that into the evidence as to why they might be saying this. Finally, there's these ranking correlation studies, like Moz or Searchmetrics, who puts out these giant correlation studies. The problem with Moz and Searchmetrics is there's three problems. Is that you can't replicate the results, right? Moz has Moz is in a position to poll hundreds of industry experts. Searchmetrics is in a position to run data correlation studies on a huge bank of data on 100,000 SERPs, right? And they have a number of a couple of computers they can run to process all this information. It's less scientific if you can't run the results. Also, I should make a note about science. Science in the real world and science in SEO is slightly different. So for anyone out there who's a scientist who's going to get slightly annoyed at what I consider to be science, please take this with a grain of salt. There's only so much science we can do in SEO because we don't have direct access to nature. We don't have direct access to Google. There's a black box of Google that we can't get access to. But anyway, it is less science-y, if I can use that as an adjective, if you can't replicate the results. Also, the problem with Moz and Searchmetrics correlation studies is that it's too general. It's not specific for your niche. For example, if you rank car sites, you don't care what ranks law sites, and vice versa. If you rank law sites, you don't care what ranks car sites. And it doesn't work per language either. What's ranking in the English query space might not be quite what's ranking in the Russian query space, or in the French query space, or in the German query space, etc. Finally, it does not account for query intent. Now, query intent is very important. So this is a little breakdown at the bottom here of query intent. So Google has no queries, or queries where people want to know something. Queries, search queries where people want to know and maybe do something. Search queries where they want to do something. They want to sign up for this, or they want to buy that. And search queries where they just want to go to this site. Like they type in yahoo.com into the search field. They want to go to yahoo.com, presumably, right? And so the examples of these are, what are herbal pills? That's an informational or a no query. They want to find out, what are these things called herbal pills? Best herbal pills. They want to find out what the best herbal pills are, and they may even want to buy the best herbal pills, right? Buy herbal pills. If they search in buy herbal pills, they want to, you guessed it, buy herbal pills, right? And finally, let's say they already have gone to these blog sites and they've investigated what herbal pills are, and now they want to go to this great site, Herbal Pills. I misspelled it, that's funny. Herbalpills.com. So, and this directly correlates with the sales funnel. And for those of you who don't know what the sales funnel is, it's extremely important. The sales funnel tells you what the person is looking for and what you should be providing. So for the what are herbal pills, they're looking for a blog page, like a bit of an editorial as to what herbal pills are, what the pros and cons are, what you should watch out for. That's the kind of information they're looking for and what Google will like to serve to them. Best herbal pills, they're looking for like your top 5 herbal pills, your top 10 herbal pills, or or some kind of rating system. You see a lot of affiliates trying to sell in that area, and that's probably not a bad thing. Buy herbal pills, they've already done that research. They're lower in the sales funnel. They've already investigated what herbal pills are and which ones they think they want. They want to go buy them, right? Or they're low enough in the sales funnel, they have a high tolerance for fear, and they just want to, just buy it, whatever, just try it out. And then herbalpills.com, they've already done their research, and they want to go to this specific site selling this specific brand of herbal pills that they've read all about and they think is wonderful. So just as an aside, understanding the sales funnel is crucial to understanding business and SEO, as it turns out, because that's how you know what site, what kind of web page to give them. And Google is tracking this directly these days. But it's also very important for my correlation study, because it turns out that the problem with Moz and Searchmetrics is that they do broad studies across the board on all different query intents. And so it is entirely possible, there are patents out on this, and as our research shows, seems to be actually true that Google has drastically different ranking algorithms for drastically different query types. What ranks you for no queries is what is different than ranks you from do queries, And obviously is different than ranks you than navigational queries, right? So the problem with Moz and Searchmetrics correlation study is that it's too broad. You can't replicate the results. You can't do it specific to your query. You can't even do it specific to your niche. Of course, that is until now. Now we can run our own correlation-based competitive analysis, and we can see what is ranking in your particular niche, right? You don't care what's ranking law sites. You have a used car site. You care what's ranking used cars, and so you're going to check to see what does everybody else have that is ranking on page 1, and what does nobody have ranking on page 1, and what does everybody have ranking on page 19, and what does nobody have ranking on page 19. And when you factor that against the 3 levels of evidence, remember observed evidence, what the gurus in Google says, what they've been warning people about, don't do this, right? And then when you factor in also what your correlation tells you, you start to get a very powerful picture of very interesting factors you should be using. Okay, so here's one thing I need to tell you. So this correlation competition study that I'm going to be doing and showing you the results of is not ye olde competitive analysis. Back in the day, you would hire an SEO to do a competitive analysis. And so they would do a search in Google, and they would make wild guesses as to what ranks these sites here based on what they think already ranks sites, right? It has confirmation bias built into the process, right? They think it's like, because it used to be much more simple, so it wasn't such a dumb thing to do. Everyone knew it was links and keywords on your page that ranked sites. And so they would basically, or they thought they knew that, and they would just go and check that and say, oh, you need to do this more, and you need to get more links, and you need to get better keywords. You know, it was pretty much a no-brainer. But that's not how we're doing it anymore. That's not how the correlation competition study works. So this is what I'm going to be showing you. The correlation competition study tests well over 300 factors now, and as I said, it also tests on-page factors, off-page factors, links and social, and SERP factors. And the difference is that we add in everything that we can test. We add in weird stuff you may never have thought of. We add in everything that we can possibly access through Java and test in our tool. And it provides a correlation report, which unfortunately was in my new report. I could have shown you then. An actual example, but it's very robust. It has the Spearman's correlation coefficient, the Pearson's correlation coefficient. I'm going to be using just a simple percentage of instances of how much percent of the time did X factor show up on spot 1 to 5, and how many times did X factor show up on spot 190 to 200. And we can start to see a really interesting picture based on that. And so that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a correlation between what's ranking on page 1 and what's ranking on page 19. So this gives us corroborating evidence to say what helps rank you on spot 1 to 5, and corroborating evidence of what says helps rank you on page 19. That is to say, bad factors, factors you don't want at all, unless you want to rank on page 19, which I'm assuming you don't. Okay, so I repeat, and this is what's going to look at like. You want to look, see that you want the blue factors. This is exactly what it's going to look like in a second when I show it to you. You want to use the blue factors up here. You want to be, and you want a strong percentage, 62% or a strong percentage of instances for those factors. You do not want these factors down here, the factors that are in black and red, and especially when they have a high percentage, because it tells you that it shows up on page 19. And remember, this is corroborating evidence. I would not use this evidence alone. I would add this evidence to what Google has warned you not to do, and I would add you and what the gurus say to do or not to do. And this is a great way to check what the gurus say, right? So when a guru comes onto a forum now, I love this. When a guru comes onto a forum and they say, having, whatever, I can't think of one on the top of my head. They say you've got to have your tags set this way, or you've got to have your tags set that way, and that will rank you when you're trying to rank car sites. So I'll run a report on 10 or 20 different car-related queries, and I'll say, actually, I could see absolutely no correlation with what you're saying. None of the sites on page 1 had these factors you're talking about, but most of the pages on page 19 had these factors, and so your ranking factor seems to be much more correlated to page 19 than page 1. So this is how you can check what all gurus like me, including me, right? Gurus like me, gurus like anybody, what they say, you can use these kind of reports to keep them honest and check to see what's really going on. So in the report I'm going to show you, we want to see the blue ones. We don't want the black and red ones. Okay, and as I said, it's amazing. It's really exciting. The information that comes out of this, it really starts to paint an interesting picture of when the information comes out of it. Just like as exciting as whatever this young lady saw, I imagine it must have been chocolate ice cream or maybe even ponies. It's exciting like that for us. Okay, so I'm going to show you the positive factors and the negative factors. So that's enough preamble. Let's just get right to the positive factors. Okay, so here's the positive factors that show you what you might want to consider doing. So I'm going to talk about them and I'm going to summarize it all at the end. Okay, so here's the interesting HTML factors. The matches in web page meta description, so keywords in the web page meta description, how many bytes it took to have the first match of the keyword in the web page HTML source, the matches of the keyword in emphasis tags, EM tags, or that makes it italicized, the matches in web page strong tags or strong tags, those are the EM strong or the logical character formatters as opposed to the design character formatters of, say, I and B, the I and B tags. So matches, keyword matches in the strong tag, so making your keywords bold, and exact matches in web page list tags. List is the bulleted list. So, so this is fascinating, right? So this correlated much stronger, 50%, and in this case 37%, with page 1 rankings. And didn't correlate very strongly at all with page 19 rankings. So this, it looks like these factors, having exact matches in list tags and sentence, broad, or partial matches in everything else, including in this case strong and emphasis tags, seem to be much more page 1-ish than page 19-ish. So it seems to lean towards that being a ranking factor. Let's look at the next one. So these are image HTML factors. Now this is interesting, and this breaks what I was doing a little bit, but bear with me. So image tags in the web page, the more tags you have, the more it correlates with page 19. But although it's pretty close in page 1 as well. Image tags with alt text, the more it correlates with page 1. Image tags with alt text in the web page correlates more with more 19. So what this tells me is that the more image tags you have, you might be correlating with page 19 more if you just have like a spammy page with a bunch of just images on it. But you want to use alt attributes as your labels for the image only. And I would suggest not to stuff them full of keywords like we've been doing for years. And I'll show you why when we get to the negative factors. But it looks like the closer you get to page 1, the more you want to use alt text in your image tags, which makes sense because you're making it easier for Google to know what that image is about. Like if you have a picture of a lady, say pretty lady. That's what the alt text should be. Pretty lady enjoying herbal pills. Don't let your imagination run too wild with that. That's what this is going to be. Someone has asked if I could simplify this. I will. At the end of all of this, I'm just showing you the data now, and this is the simple version of the data, trust me. At the end of this, I'm going to summarize everything. So I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to simplify it all at the end. They also said it looks like they're both very close. Yes, sometimes the numbers are very close, but that's why I like, and some statisticians will have a problem with that. And so fine, they say 50% is a coin flip in correlation. So that doesn't tell you anything. That's true when you're comparing to nature. When you're comparing page 1 to page 19, it does tell you something, right? Especially when you run this report again and again and again and again in different query spaces. It does settle your doubt as to whether this leans more towards ranking or this leads more towards deranking you. Because I'm comparing page 1 to page 19. So as I said, I'm going to summarize all this at the end and draw better conclusions. And also, this data is going to come up again and again. You'll see it's going to come up again and again and again. It starts to paint a very interesting picture. So the on-page linking factors, Look, this is pretty much different. So do follow links in the web page HTML source correlates with page 1 much better. Exact matches in the web page anchor tags. Exact match internal links still seems to matter at 62% on page 1, but not on page 19. No follow links in the web page source correlates with page 1 much better as well. Now, I should mention, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this earlier on, the query space I'm looking at specifically is spammy, quote-unquote, affiliate niche. It's a skincare related, herbal supplement related affiliate niche. I ran about 20 or 30 different search queries, and I checked both page 1 and page 19. So this is in the no-do query space. This is in the informational / transactional, like best herbal pills, skincare brands, best HGH supplements. Those are the kind of queries that I did. So just keep that, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So keep that in mind when you see these results, that it makes perfect sense. So a lot of these sites will be affiliate sites, and Google's been telling you to no follow your affiliate links. I would say, in fact, you might even want to cloak them. You want to make sure that Google doesn't even realize those are links. But you see it's a high correlation of page 1 rankings with no follow. So if you're working in a space and you're wondering, should I no follow my links? Google says to do it. The correlation says to do it here as well. So I think you should go do it. That tells you to go do it. So anyway, it looks like more links are better. The more do follow links you have, the higher you're going to rank, especially if it's exact match query. If and only if, though, that it's natural, and I'll tell you why in a second, because we're about to look at keyword stuffing and the negative factors, and it's insane. And don't overdo it. I have 1 link for 1 target per page. Google has also warned you not to have editorial links when you also have navigation links. I would have 1 link to 1 page on each page of your site. And I'll show you why in a couple seconds. Okay, here's a fascinating one, guys. Look at this one. Social factors. If you're wondering, does social help rank? The answer seems to be a resounding yes. Google Plus page listed in your web page links, 50% to page 1. Instagram pages in web page links, 50% 1 to 5. Facebook accounts in web page links, 50% spot 1 to 5. Instagram pages on web page links, 50%. Matches in web page OG title, that's for Facebook OG title schema tag. That's for Facebook right there. The Open Graph schema, which Open Graph is Facebook, 50%. Twitter accounts and web page links, 62%, even a stronger correlation. So this tells me that, and this core here is what I'm already seeing in rankings I've been saying to do for years, and what Google has been saying, having a strong, make sure you have a reciprocal link. You link out to your social pages. So like if you're like at plus.google.com/plus Josh Bachynski or /plus Best Herbal Pills or Josh's Fruit Emporium, whatever the name of your company is, or a strong social page, link out to that. And then in that page, you set your website field. And in Google Plus, you even go in Webmaster Tools and make that association, right? And so, and as this person mentions, there is a patent out about this stuff as well. So this shows, if you have any doubt if this is a ranking factor, it looks like it definitely is, even the so-called spammy affiliate niches. Now, interestingly here, a side note, Ted Kubitis, who's the author of the software, he's used this software to increase his SEO revenue 250%. And he works in more in the e-commerce fields. He works for companies that sells products, like plush teddy bears and fleecy hoodies and just normal products. And they found that social signals do not help at all in those kinds of queries. But I speculated, I said, hey, why don't we test comments? And so we're working comments into the software. We can see if it has good comments or bad comments, or at least has comments on the page. And I'm betting you, my hypothesis is that it's going to show a correlation for pages that have comments that are going to rank, because that's the social for e-commerce pages, right? A comment or a rating or review that says this is great. Ratings and reviews already correlate strongly with rankings on that sector. And that also tells you why you need to run this correlation competition study on your query space, because your query space can be different. So many people are in the no-do query space, so that's why I did this, and it's pretty general, and it's pretty safe to trust. But if you just run a blog and you're in the no query space, or if you just run e-commerce pages, you've got to run it on your own data, and you're going to see different results. But so social factors seems in no-do, seems to be, even in affiliate spaces, seems to be massively correlating with page 1 rankings. And the people on page 19 are not doing it, and that could be very well why they're on page 19. Okay, here's some web design factors too. Look at this. JavaScript includes in the web page HTML source. Kilobytes in web page style tags. CSS includes in the web page HTML source, and matches in the web page span tags. Span tags are an artifact of more robust HTML5 CSS3 style design, right? Because a span tag is just an inline tag that does nothing. It just allows you to define an inline area to apply style to it through CSS. So this tells me that correlates very strongly with page 1 rankings. Look, that tells me that you want to have a robust modern design. Google's been saying you should have a robust modern design. The correlation backs up what Google is saying. So you have to have a robust modern design. So I find this fascinating. Okay, and you would think, because we're only checking on-page factors, we can't make any guesses as to user metrics. Not true. If you take a look at this, matches in web page value attributes. Value attributes is the attributes that, quite frankly, goes in the HTML form tag, FORM, the form tag. Like any kind of form they would fill out to convert, like a shopping cart or a sign-up page, that would be the value attributes for the form tag. And look how strongly it correlates with page 1 rankings, which is not surprising because these are a no-do query space, right? They want to know something and then they want to do something. A form tag in HTML is how you do something. They want to fill out a form. They want to put their name and email in and get something or do something, right? So look how much strongly it correlates with page 1 than page 19. So you got to make sure you have a form tag. Also, a bomb was dropped. I've known about this for a few months because of my secret Google contacts. But Google has been sending zombie traffic, has been sending bot traffic. Go check the Warrior forums. There's some interesting reports on this now. Google is sending bot traffic, and Matt Cutts warned us that they would do this 2 years ago before he left. At SMX Advanced, he said, "Hey guys, by the way, make sure you have autocomplete on your HTML forms." And everyone was like, "Ooh, is it a ranking factor?" He's like, "No, don't ask me that. Blah 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 blah. Just make sure." And whenever he says this, do it because it's a ranking factor. That's the only reason why he's telling you. Make sure you have autocomplete on your HTML forms. Make sure your form is tiny. I know a lot of companies who want to make a big, complex HTML form because they're lazy and they want to weed out sales that way, right? They don't want to have people calling them on the phone, asking them dumb questions. They don't want to do that. That's the wrong way to do it. You're gonna hurt your Google rankings doing it that way these days. You want to make that form like one click go, and they can finish because people are lazy. Anyone who works in the affiliate niches know that people are lazy. You have to make it boneheadedly obvious, above the fold, one click go, and that's what you want to do. And the correlation plays out with that as well, strongly, very strongly. Not enough people on page 19 are doing this. That could be very well one of the reasons why they're on page 19. Okay, here's also some static quality factors, ones that painted an interesting picture. Keep in mind, the software has way more data than this, but sometimes it was like 45%, 45%, so it didn't paint a picture, right? 50% of people on page 19 had this factor, and 50% of people page 1 had this factor, and so I could not draw any conclusion that it helped you or hurt you, right? So I left all those out. There's hundreds of those. I can show you the data that I have that I got all this from. There's hundreds of those. And there's sometimes just 0% and 0%. So nobody on page 1 had this, and nobody on page 19 had this. So in that report, I could not say that it helped you or hurt you, right? But here I can say it looks like having this is going to help you. Having privacy links in your anchor tags, having phone numbers in your web page HTML source, and having copyrights in your web page HTML source. Remember, Google has been looking for these kind of static, remember the Elite Quality Raters guideline? Google has been looking for these kind of static quality factors for years, right? Because it's one of the things they can check for easily. I have a complete list of them on my website down here, themoralconcept.net/pandalist.html. That's no space there, just pandalist, all one word, HTML. And that has more of these kinds of things. These are the only ones that in this report that I could pull out that had any meaningful data. and the correlation backs up what Google's been saying, what I've been saying, what just makes sense to do. So if you're wondering if you should have these things, have these things. In fact, check out my whole list. Okay, here's the next one. Does HTTPS help? A lot of people were crazy about it at first, and then people were, you shouldn't do it. And I'm saying you should be very careful how you implement it, because you will, I guarantee you will see a drop in rankings, at least temporarily. If not, I've seen people, if you're on the borderline of quality or trust, you will lose rankings for months, if not years, right? So don't do this if your rankings have been fluctuating, and don't do this if you're kind of fluctuating on page 2 or page 1, or you had a big drop recently and you think you might have quality problems. Don't change to HTTPS. However, if your rankings have been solid, spot 3 for years, and they've been solid, and you don't think you have any quality problems, and you have a dip in your sales period, that you can do it where hurting rankings is not going to hurt you, and no one else on your page has HTTPS yet, you might want to change to HTTPS because it does seem to correlate with page 1 rankings, and Google does seem to like it better than sites that don't have it. So it does correlate with rankings. Google has admitted it gives you a boost, so it makes sense to do it. But again, be very, very careful how you do it. I've seen people shoot themselves in the foot and hurt their rankings. Again, if you have any doubts or trust or quality problems, it'll screw up your rankings. So come see me and I can take a look for you. Okay, also the question, does speed help? Look at this, very interesting. The way this data works is that there was no correlation to any specific specified field of milliseconds on page 19. Vis-a-vis, the speed was all over the board. The speed was all over the place. Someone asked for the URL, memorialconcept.net/pandalist.html. Did I type it correctly? Looks like I did. Something like that. There we go. So that means the speed was all over the place, right, on page 19. But on page 1, a very consistent trend of higher speed happened the more you approached spot 1. There was a chart, you could plot the graph, right, in the Spearman's correlation coefficient. Now, not a lot, only 25%. So if you were just checking page 1, you would say, oh, speed's not a factor. But that's why I check page 1 against page 19, because now it can tell me it's a little bit of a factor, right? It does lean towards being a factor on page 1. So when you start approaching page 2, shore up your speed, especially if you're over like 5 seconds or something like that. Make sure you shore up your speed, and I have a great speed testing tool. Email me, I can send it to you. But if you're wondering if you should be improving your speed, it's a little bit of a factor, but it's like the 3rd or 4th or 5th thing you should be doing. Unless, of course, your speed is like it takes 20 seconds to load a page. Well, that's a problem. Okay? That's going to be a problem for many reasons. So take what I just said with a grain of salt. But it does correlate with page 1 and does not correlate at all with page 19. Okay, here's another really fascinating one. Very recently, Gary Iles dropped, he's a Google employee, he's the new Matt Cutts, so to speak. He's a quality rater. He works in the quality rating office with John Mueller in Switzerland, in Zurich. And he also does a little bit of programming. He's the guy who programmed the HTTPS algorithm, the boost algorithm. And he said at a recent conference, he dropped this bomb, and where all the whiteouts were like, "Rrr." He said, don't remove your authorship markup. Remember a couple of years ago, they had this authorship tag, like a rel kind of authorship, and you could point it to your Google Plus profile, and then in your Google Plus profile, you could say, yeah, I write for this blog, and you make a reciprocal link, exactly like the social reciprocal links we just saw with a strong correlation to ranking on page 1. Authorship still has strong correlations to ranking, right? It's much more page 1-ish than it is page 19-ish. And so it still correlates with rankings, even though Google turned it off. And keep this in mind, even though Google said they turned it off, Google just said, well, don't remove it, because they still have a bit of a conscience, and so they don't want to hurt people, because they like going to conferences and being cool and thinking they're good, nice people, and everyone likes them, and so they do a good job. And so they do tell some true things, but this is when you have to make sense. It still benefits Google to have authorship working, and it benefits them to say, it doesn't work, no, don't abuse it, but then seeing who uses it and seeing if they can use those signals, right? They'll use whatever signals they can use. You don't think they won't use no-follow links. They'll use no-follow links if they can, right? If that's all the people are making, that's what they'll use because they have no choice. So authorship still seems to help, even though Google turned it off. Even in spammy affiliate niches. I wasn't checking white hat SEO blogs who would still have it just because they installed it years ago and never removed it. I'm checking affiliate niches, right? So some affiliates somewhere figured out that it still works and they're using it. Here's a very fascinating one. Does URL naming matter? The screaming answer is yes. Look how much it matters, right? Matches in Google result document name and directory in Google result URL path. So this is the number of, when it's like slash apples slash redapples.html. Redapples.html is the document name, slash redapples is the directory in the Google result path. It correlated a little bit with page one rankings, but look how strongly the document name, having the keyword in the document name. It didn't have to be exact match either, just a broad match or partial match or some match somewhere in the Google document name was strong correlations. EMQ was not, exact match query was not a strong correlation. Having the match somewhere in there did have a strong correlation. Also, EMDs had no strong correlation. There was 50% EMDs on page 1 and 50% EMDs on page 19. I could not, with that data, say that having an EMD helped you in any way, shape, or form. But having the keyword in the document name helped tremendously, 87% versus a third of them on page 19. So that's fascinating. Okay, so that was all the positive factors. So now we're going to look at some of the negative factors, or what I've affectionately dubbed how to rank on page 19. So if you want to rank on page 19, do these things you're about to see. If you don't want to rank on page 19, don't do these things you're about to see. Okay, this is the most interesting one, where I had the most data and I had to shrink it to fit it all in. Keyword frequency. People ask, what is the keyword density I should use? Is keyword density important? Do I have to worry about my keyword density in my text and my titles and my meta descriptions anymore? And a lot of people say, no, don't worry about it. The answer is yes, worry about it, right? It looks like it helps tremendously up to a point, and then there's a sharp drop off at how much it helps. So you want to get to the bleeding edge of that point and not go over, and then, because there's a sharp drop off. Look at this. Exact matches in H1 tags, strong correlation, page 19. Exact matches in H1, H3. Keywords in the meta keywords. Leading matches, so the first left keyword in the title tag. First left in matches in web page sentences in general. Matches in the title attributes. That's on the image tag, image source equals blah, title equals what it'll be, the mouse is over. Google has said specifically again and again not to do that. That's keyword stuffing. And look, it correlates with page 19 rankings and not with page 1. Matches in web page title tag. Matches in the top 1 word, top 5 word, top 10 word, and top 3 words by keyword density, right? So the higher you push the keyword density, if it's your top 1 word in keyword density, or it's in your top 5 words in keyword density, or it's in your top 10 words in keyword density, that correlates strongly with ranking on page 19. That's keyword stuffing. It's too much. You're past the sharp edge. Matches in A tags, matches in your A tags, matches in your alt attributes. So this is why I say when you use alt attributes, you want to label the image. You don't want to stuff in keywords there. And finally, exact matches in the strong tags correlates more with page 19 than it does on page 1. So, remembering everything I said before, factor it against now what the negative factors say. I don't stuff exact match keywords in your tags, except list items and your anchor tag, but you want to label logically, right? If that page is about buying red apples, then you could say you can purchase red apples here. Don't say buy red apples, right? I would use a partial or broad match to be safe, and I would include no follows, right? PageRank sculpting still works and still is important. I would no follow your About Us page, your contact page, your FAQ page. You know, Google doesn't want to rank an FAQ page these days anymore. They want a one-to-one correlation of, I want to buy red apples. I want the best red apples. Here's a page that has best red apples somewhere in the name of it, and it's on the page, right? Someone asks you should use semantic keywords. I'm guessing by that you mean broad match, you mean synonyms, you mean partial match. The answer is yes in strong and emphasis tags, because that correlates more with page 19 rankings. To use exact match here, but you want to use exact match in list items and anchors. So you see how powerful this is? Now I would run this report about 20 more times to make sure that this data makes sense. And I've checked page 19 and it's around 70% the same every time. It does fluctuate more than page 1, but in doing these tests, I've tested the results in page 19, site A, site B, site C, all the way down to site whatever, 10. They're the same 70% of the time. So page 19 doesn't fluctuate that much, but still, I would run this report a bunch of times, but based on the 30 queries or so I did for this, which is a fairly broad sample for what I'm doing, it tells me not to put exact match keywords anywhere except for list items and anchor tags, and don't put them too much in the title tags, right? The title tags should be natural. Don't just have buy red apples dash bestredapples.com in your title tag. It should be something like, you can purchase the best red apples here. I would use semantic tags there, and I would use semantic tags, sentence, partial, broad match, and strong and emphasis as well. So I would make the whole sentence bold that says, now we have the best red apples on the planet, or something like that. That's how you should do it there. And don't overdo it, because if you get to a certain point, you're going to drop the sharp edge off. So I would tweak it until you've got, good keywords in different places, but not to go too far. Because as you can see by the data here, keyword stuffing is a real thing, and you will get to a point where it drops off. And that's exactly what Matt Cutts said. Matt Cutts said years ago, their keyword algorithm works like this. You get better rankings, because you seem to be more like what they're looking for until you reach a certain threshold, and they drop that off sharply. So I will sum this all up at the end as well. So character limits, does it matter how many characters you have in your meta description, in your title tag? The answer seems to be yes. It correlates not so strongly in meta description, but in your title tag, it does correlate strongly with ranking on page 19 and not ranking on page 1. So the more characters you have, the worse it is. So don't overstuff your snippet, your title tag or your meta description. It looks like it is either a direct issue, Google's deranking that because you're making it hard for them because they have to rewrite your title tag and they don't like doing that. That actually costs them money, right? If they have to rewrite 10 trillion title tags, that actually costs them money because it costs them computing cycles, and computing cycles is money. So they might actually directly demote you for that. That could be one, and instead of 10 strikes system, you're out. That could be one strike against you. So don't do it. And plus, it's a click-through rate issue because Google never writes your title tags as good as you do. So it's a click-through rate issue. So I guarantee this is a ranking issue, either directly or indirectly. And the correlation bears it out. Okay, the next one. So this is fascinating. So this one is fascinating. Look at this. So everyone says you need to have your canonicals, rel canonical tag. I say you need to have your rel canonical tag, but doing it right is good. 50% of the sites on page 1 had it, but look, 78% of the sites on page 19 had canonicals too. But when I went in and I checked those canonicals, they were doing canonicals wrong, right? They would canonical to just to itself a URL. They had a whole set of URL parameters, so they're using like default stock WordPress installations that had just canonical in it. That was canonicling to the every page was canonicling to the index page, or they're doing the canonicals wrong in some way. So it looks like canonicals, if anything, are bad, but I know that they protect you against some negative SEO factors. So don't remove them, but add them and make sure you get them right. Do not do a canonical to a URL parameter if you can avoid it. John Mueller has said that specifically. He said, behind the scenes, he said to us one time, guys, make sure you're not canonically to a URL parameter. You can if you have to, but I wouldn't do it if I were you. And when he says stuff like that, and the correlation says there's a problem with URL with canonicals, I would pay attention to that. So make sure you get your canonicals right. Don't get them wrong. Sorry, excuse me, I have a cold. I can't tell. Okay, here's another problem, is syndicated content. Here's another thing. People are on page 19 are probably still using like auto WordPress templates and things like that, and they have RSS links, and they have schema, like the H-entry schema or the H-atom schema. I'll type that in the field here. H-entry or H-atom. You want to avoid that schema, and you want to avoid RSS links, because that's telling Google that you're syndicated content. I've been saying that for years. Google has been suggesting that implicitly, and the correlation bears it out. Look, it correlates much better, not much better, it correlates better with page 19 rankings than it does with page 1 rankings. Only a quarter of the people under the 30 or 40 queries I did had an RSS link in the web page. So I would avoid that. It's just telling your spammy syndicated content. I don't know why they would want to rank that on page 1. And the correlation bears it out. Okay, here's another interesting one. Does URL length matter? It looks like yes, a shorter URL is better. And closer, having a page, trying to rank a page that's closer to the index page in the directory structure is better, right? So characters in Google result URL, they had more characters. Characters in Google result URL, they had less characters. The less characters you had, the more it plotted to spot 1 to 5. The more characters you had, the more it plotted to page 19. And a little bit of a lean for having a big domain name correlated more with page 19 in this query space than it did with page 1. So if you're thinking, should I register the best red apples you can buy on the planet because I think they're awesome and my name is josh.com, the answer would be no. That would be correlating more to page 19 rankings as opposed to having BRA, bestredapples.com or BRA.today. You spend $20 to get that domain. I guarantee, well, BRA.today is probably taken because someone probably ran a script to buy all the ABC dot whatevers, right? But bestredapples.today, it's a nice short domain name. It tells them exactly what they can get there. It doesn't help you, but it doesn't seem to hurt you. So there you go. And it correlates with page 19 to have a longer domain name and have also more directory structure, right? The more directory structure or URL parameters you have, the more that ranks onto page 19 and not page 1. And this is not my opinion. This is the correlation bearing it out, and Google saying not to do it, and it making sense. So you have the 3 levels of evidence, and me seeing that all the time when I'm doing SEO audits. So you have the 3 levels of evidence there. And that's what this is all about. It's about corroborating evidence, right? The correlation itself tells you almost nothing. It's when you corroborate it with everything else you start to get powerful, powerful, powerful information. Okay, here's the pagination, right? So rel next prev. Everyone says you should use rel next prev, right? And you should use the rel next prev pagination. So it's like, next, bottom of an article, next. The answer is no. Fascinating, the answer is no. Nobody on page 1 in the queries I did, in the reports I did, no one on page 1 had rel next prev, but a third of them on page 19 had it. And this makes sense because Google wants fewer clicks to task completion. And people do not want to read a 3,000-page article on the best herbal pills, right? They want, just give me the top 5 herbal pills, with the stars. I want to see stars, right? That's what they want. So pagination is not helping, at least in this query space. Maybe in blog query spaces, it would be different. That's why you've got to run this report on your query space. Whatever your query space is, you've got to run it on that or get someone to run it for you on that and then explain the results and how it works. You can't run it yet because the software's still in beta, but when it comes out, you could run it yourself if you want to be a scientist. Or again, I'd be very happy to do it. Here's another interesting one. So does Google Analytics help? There's been a rumor going around for a long time that they might use Google Analytics data against you. I don't think that they do, but if you wanted to check, like this was one of those SEO myths you wanted to go check for yourself, and so you say, okay, Josh, run this report. I want to see how many people have Google Analytics on these page 1. Only a quarter of them, interestingly, on these, however many few dozen queries I did, have Google Analytics in the web page on page 1, but a third of them, more of them do on page 19. So it's not a big difference, but it is leaning more to page 19 rankings. Having Google Analytics installed is more leaning towards that. So I don't think it's a problem, but I had to show you, different, when something leaned one way or the other and there was a rumor about it, that's what I decided to show you, and so that's what this says. I would still use Google Analytics. I've never seen it. I rank hundreds of sites page 1, and I have Google Analytics in them all, with my name attached to all of them. But I've never had any problems, and I would be very surprised if Google did that, because then I would raise I'd have a whole other documentary to raise, right? So they'd probably, the PR, the bad public relations for themselves they would cause, they'd probably not do it. But so I don't think they would do it, and it's a different company. Google Analytics is a different company than Google Search, so they would have to, the red tape they would have to cut to use it would be huge. But so draw from that what you will. And okay, so that's it. So here's the summary of everything that I found for the positive factors and the negative factors. So I would use exact match query when you're writing your keywords and doing your text. I would use exact match query in the lists and in internal navigation only if it is natural. When people are just doing a search and they would only type it in for a search and it makes no sense to make it a link, don't do that. Just make it natural. You can purchase red apples here. We have our top 5 herbal pills page here. Don't do best herbal pills, because top 5 is a good synonym for best anyway. I would use broad or partial match in any strong or emphasis tags. I would not use exact match there, because people have been spamming it too much, and it seems that's one of the things that drops you off that sharp edge. I would use alts as labels on pictures only. More links are better. A bigger site is better if you can maintain the quality. I'd be very careful about that. If you can maintain the quality, I would use a bigger site if possible, but you have to watch your user metrics and make sure people like your site. I would no-follow most of your outlinks. It seems to correlate better with page 1 rankings, and there's page rank sculpting reasons you would do that to keep the page rank on the pages you want. I would do follow your link outs to your social pages and on your index page, and I would do follow your link out to your authorship page on your blog pages, and link back from these social pages. So you have that reciprocal link, and make sure you have a social page where it's not just tumbleweeds blowing through. You actually have followers and people talking, and that's a good off-page reference signal that tells you what you should be doing. Have a well-used modern design and user interface. Remember, a robust modern design with bigger CSS and stuff correlates much better with rankings than not having that. Remember, so it's important. I have correlation proof for that now, right? Have as few clicks to order to do as possible, for them to sign up, for them to order, whatever it is. If you have social share buttons, it should be 1 click to share, or 2 clicks maximum. It should be click, they get a little thing, click to share. Like, you don't want them to have to log in. You don't want 5 clicks to share, because they'll never do it, right? Any kind of conversion, anytime they're clicking as a conversion, you want that to be 1 click, because the correlation shows that the more you have that, the worse it is in terms of user metrics. The moralconcept.net has all of the bad quality signals you want to look at. Make sure you avoid the bad quality signals. I can only find 3 off that list that this report backed up with correlation, but the more and more I do of these, the more and more I see my list is true. Everything they said in the Raiders guideline to demote, they have an algorithm now to demote. Duh, it makes sense, and the correlation is slowly over time backing that up. Implement HTTPS when and if is feasible, but be very careful when you do that. Do not do it if you haven't been ranking solidly in page, on spot 3 or whatever it has been for years. Don't do it otherwise, and don't do it if you have a blog. There's no point. Only if you're in. The more transactional you are, the better you've been ranking, the more you should consider doing HTTPS. Being above a 3-second load time on page 1 is increasingly risky. As you saw, speed correlated, it ramped up. The correlation got more and more important the further your rankings went to page 1, to spot 1, or spot 5 to 10 anyway. Use silo and document naming. So silo structure works. it had a slight correlation to working. That's having a directory structure with the keywords in it, and or broad match keywords, semantic keywords in it. But document naming correlated even more. It's the strongest correlation out of the whole report. It was 87 point something % on page 1, which makes sense. If they want to know about red apples, then you should have red apples in the document name, because Google will go, I guess it's about red apples, right? And people will click it too, right? It could just be click-through rate. People see, oh, this page is about red apples. Great, click. That's what they want. It could be through click-through rate as well. So I would use the silo structure here. Josh's Fruit Emporium, get it? Yum, never mind, sorry, bad joke. /apples /redapples.html. Sorry, I have a cold. Don't overstuff your meta description or title tag, because that correlated strongly, both in stuffing it with keywords and having it too full so it doesn't fit, correlated strongly with page 19. Unless you want to rank on page 19, by all means, go ahead and do so. Implement your canonicals correctly. Don't obviously use or link to syndicated content, including that HATM and HEntry schema. Again, RSS links correlates more with page 19 than with page 1, which makes sense. Your ranking page should be linked from the index with the shortest URL structure possible, right? That's been a rumor. You should be doing that for years. I have correlation now to back that up, right? So go and do it. And Google Analytics is only useful to troubleshoot SEO issues. It's definitely not going to help rank you. In fact, if anything, it looks like it was correlating to page 19. But it was such a slight thing that you can't say for sure. I would use it, because there's some very vital SEO information in Google Analytics that you can't get anywhere else. So, and Search Console as well. So, I mean, I would use it. Okay, and so, as I said, this is corroborating evidence that backs up the opinions, and I now have correlation to back up this stuff that I've been inferring, I've been seeing in my SEO audits, and I've been inferring because Google has told people publicly and has told me personally. I've had private conversations with Google employees, Matt Cutts, Smiley Oye, private conversations with John Mueller. Before I made my documentary, I was in the Google Cool Club, and they would tell me things, and they do tell you things. So if you can afford to go to a conference and make friends with Google, do so, because if you make friends with them and they think you're white hat, they will get buddy with you after a while, and they'll start telling you stuff. And so now I have correlation to back up that stuff they've been telling me. And so this is super powerful, guys. I can't stress how powerful this is. So here's my quick plug. I can do this stuff for you. The software is coming out. If you want to get on the beta testing, email me. If you want, I can't promise I can put you in the beta testing, because we already got a nice set of beta testers, and the more we add, the more tough it gets to manage. But if you're interested, by all means, email me. It doesn't hurt to email me. There's my email address, and I can also run these studies for you as well. And I can tailor the information and show you why I'm saying what I'm saying and coming to these conclusions. So that is the SEO report. Again, email me if you'd like to.